I can't wait to share this episode with you because it's shocking, surprising, and important. It's about one of the most important things in my view, the foundation of all rights, all freedoms, and of democracy itself. This is about free speech, censorship, and banned books. Here's what happened. They canceled Ryan Holiday. I could not believe it. Not a radical, Ryan Holiday, the best-selling author of The Obstacle is the Way, a student of Stoicism, a soft-spoken advocate for reason, discipline, resilience. Wow. He was scheduled to speak at the U.S. Naval Academy on April 14th, 2025. It would have been his fourth consecutive year giving a lecture there, this time on the theme of wisdom. How's that for paradoxical? An hour before he took the stage, he received a phone call. Would he be willing to remove any mention of the 381 books recently removed from the Naval Academy's library? He declined, and so his lecture was canceled. Shocking. Let's get into it. This is Strategic Basics, where we look at breaking news and turn it into breakthrough strategies for experts, authors, and entrepreneurs. And I'm Aurora Winter, author of Turn Words into Wealth and the founder of Same Page Publishing. Ryan Holiday shared the full story in a guest essay for the New York Times, published April 19th, 2025. The headline, "The Naval Academy Canceled My Lecture on Wisdom." It's ironic. A lecture on wisdom was canceled because it touched briefly and respectfully on the removal of books. The reason? Apparently, the institution feared the perception that the speech would conflict with Executive Order 14151, which aims to eliminate radical and wasteful DEI programming in government agencies. I am not a legal expert, but I didn't see a directive to remove books from libraries in that executive order at a glance. But if you know differently, please let me know in the comments below. I'm quite curious about that. Anyway, Ryan Holiday's slides had been sent up the chain of command, and the request came back, please avoid mentioning the book removals. He decided not to comply. Quote, "I had to choose between my message or my continued welcome at an institution it has been one of the honors of my life to speak at," Ryan Holiday wrote. This wasn't a performance. It wasn't defiance for a show. It was integrity. It was a quiet, clear refusal to compromise on the core message of his talk and about how we pursue truth and what wisdom demands. The decision to cancel the speech, according to a naval spokesperson, was simply a quote-unquote schedule change and a reflection of the Academy's apolitical mission. But Ryan Holiday's article makes the stakes clear. Quote, "The pursuit of wisdom is impossible without engaging with and challenging uncomfortable ideas," end quote. And perhaps even more pointedly, he said, "No people at any public institution should have to fear losing their job for pushing back on such an obvious overreach, let alone those tasked with defending our freedom." Yet, here we are. So he was expressing compassion and empathy for the people who canceled his talk, and I thought that also showed wisdom. What really elevates this moment to something worth talking about is how Ryan Holiday responded, which I thought was wise. He delivered his talk anyway, not at the Naval Academy, but from his home studio. It's the exact lecture he had planned to give, minus the live audience, and you can watch it on YouTube, link in the description. I really enjoyed watching it yesterday. It is a great talk and it's beautiful. In his talk, Ryan Holiday tells the story of Admiral James Stockdale, a graduate of the Naval Academy and the Medal of Honor recipient. In 1961, Stockdale was sent by the Navy to Stanford University to study philosophy, specifically to study Marxist theory. Why Marxism? Because, as he told his parents in a letter, quote, "You really can't do well competing against something you don't understand, as well as something you can," end quote. Stockdale didn't just study philosophy, he lived it. Later, he was shot down over North Vietnam, and he was imprisoned for 7 years. And it was the teachings of Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher, that helped him endure torture, isolation, and psychological warfare. He later said, Quote, in Hanoi, I understood more about Marxist theory than my interrogator did. I was able to say to that interrogator, that's not what Lenin said, you're a deviationist, end quote. Stockdale survived because he was armed. Yes, they took away his weapons, but they couldn't take away the knowledge in his head. He was armed with understanding of Marxist theory, and that probably saved his life and his mental well-being. So both wisdom and philosophy helped him. Just because he understood Marxist theory did not make him a Marxist. It made him wise. And this was the point of Ryan Holiday's lecture. True leaders must seek understanding, not control, not ideological purity, understanding. And understanding requires exposure to different and sometimes difficult ideas. Quote, Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, Ryan said in the talk, used military metaphor to make his argument. We ought to read, he said, like a spy in the enemy's camp, end quote. I love that. Read like a spy in the enemy's camp. That's useful, right? We need to know what the enemy or what opposing viewpoints think so that we can understand. In other words, don't shield yourself from ideas you disagree with. Study them. Learn from them. If your beliefs can't survive challenge, they aren't beliefs, they're blind spots. I truly believe that. We need to understand. Ryan Holiday's work is deeply rooted in Stoicism. That's what his books are about. It's a philosophy built for hard times. I really love the Stoic philosophy and find it useful in my everyday life. It teaches that we can't control what happens, only how we respond. He teaches that adversity is fuel. His book, The Obstacle is the Way, is one of my favorites, and that truth matters more than comfort. Quote, it's not things that upset us, said Epictetus, but our judgment about things. And then a quote from Marcus Aurelius, if someone is able to show me that what I think or do is not right, I will happily change, for I seek the truth by which no one was ever truly harmed, end quote. I really like that. Nobody's ever truly harmed by the truth. Let's lean into that. So bottom line, these are not dangerous ideas that Ryan Holiday was wanting to share about wisdom. They're foundational ideas. But unfortunately, in today's climate of uncertainty, even a calm discussion of banned books by a respected author and thought leader is considered risky. Even Ryan Holiday is deemed too controversial, not for what he believes, but because he believes in the value of open inquiry. In my opinion, this is not just a loss for the Naval Academy, it's a loss for all of us. And I want to acknowledge our military and the men and women who serve and protect us all. And my thought is that this discussion, sparked by what happened at the Naval Academy, is another way that the military and the Naval Academy can provide an opportunity to serve and protect Americans by providing the opportunity for us to discuss this matter. And there is still something beautiful unfolding here. Ryan Holiday didn't compromise. He didn't attack the Naval Academy. In fact, he also expressed compassion for the chain of command and whoever chose to follow orders and cancel his talk at the last minute. They were likely just attempting to avoid controversy. The paradox is they created much more controversy. As so often happens, whatever we resist persists. Ryan Holiday simply stood his ground, told the truth, or his version of the truth, and gave the talk anyway on YouTube. And in doing so, he modeled the very Stoic wisdom he teaches. And wouldn't we be disappointed if he wasn't in integrity with the Stoic wisdom that he's been teaching for decades? This is the kind of wisdom that we should encourage in future leaders, the kind that listens, that reads widely, that thinks critically, the kind that, as Marcus Aurelius would say, seeks truth above all. Let's have a peek at the books that were banned. The titles removed from the Naval Academy's library were wide-ranging. According to internet sources, they included the books such as I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou, The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison, the 1619 Project by Nicole Hannah-Jones, The Handmaid's Tale by famous Canadian author Margaret Atwood, All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson. This is not fringe material. These are respected works of literature, history, and social thought. For example, Maya Angelou received the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2011. Toni Morrison went on to win the Nobel Prize in Literature and was the first Black woman to do so. Nicole Hannah-Jones won the Pulitzer Prize. The Handmaid's Tale is an Emmy Award-winning Hulu series based on the book, and All Boys Aren't Blue. That was named as one of the 100 best young adult books, YA books of all time, by Time magazine. I'll have to read that one. Anyway, this is not new. Let's not forget, in the 20th century, beloved books such as To Kill a Mockingbird, Catcher in the Rye, and even Harry Potter have been banned in U.S. schools and libraries at various points. The Bible has been banned. So has the Diary of Anne Frank. Yes, really. Even Where's Waldo was challenged for a tiny illustration deemed inappropriate. Look, when we allow fear and ideology to dictate what people can read, we don't protect them. We stunt them. We train them to obey instead of to think. And I want to draw a distinction here. I think there's a really big difference between having a book available on a shelf in a library versus shoving it down somebody's throat and forcing them to believe everything in the book. So I love to have libraries have a wide range of books available, and I do agree that there is a distinction between having something available as a resource and insisting that somebody comply or believe it. Anyway, back to Ryan Holiday. I love this author, and if you don't know his work, you certainly should. He's the author of modern classics like The Obstacle is the Way, my personal favorite, and it's really true. If you really lean into obstacles, there's the opportunity for breakthroughs. He also wrote Ego is the Enemy, Stillness is the Key, Discipline is Destiny, Lives of Stoics, and more. His books have sold millions of copies. They're read by athletes, CEOs, soldiers, and everyday people like you and me. Well, I'm everyday, I don't know about you. And they're typically modern applications of ancient wisdom, especially from the Stoics and thinkers like Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca. Bottom line, Ryan Holiday was disinvited from delivering a lecture on wisdom at the U.S. Naval Academy in April 2025 because he refused to omit a respectful mention of 381 recently removed books from the Naval Academy's library. Books not designed to indoctrinate, but to invite and challenge thought, which good books do. Ryan Holiday modeled the Stoic philosophy that he teaches. He stood firm in the face of censorship quietly, without anger. That required clarity and conviction. It required wisdom. And before I go on to talk about one of my favorite authors, Ralph Waldo Emerson, I want to provide as a resource that one of the most useful books I have found about this topic of how to communicate clearly your own needs and thoughts without attacking others is called Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. I took a 9-day workshop with Marshall, who's passed on now, but it was amazing and super valuable. And in the book, Nonviolent Communication, there's just 4 steps to effective communication. It's too much for me to get in here, but I recommend that you read Nonviolent Communication if this issue resonates with you. Anyway, I think this issue of banned books and wisdom echoes through the history of great thinkers, voices like Ralph Waldo Emerson, John Stuart Mill, and Henry David Thoreau. Let's start with one of America's foremost authors and thinkers, Ralph Waldo Emerson. He says, quote, "Peace cannot be achieved through violence. It can only be attained through understanding." That's powerful. He also says, quote, "Our chief want is someone who will inspire us to be what we know we could be." And I think Ryan Holiday did just that. Ralph Waldo Emerson also says, "If we encounter a man of rare intellect, we should ask him what books he reads," obviously, or her. And then finally, one last quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson: "The purpose of life is not to be happy. It is to be useful, to be honorable, to be compassionate, to have made some difference that you have lived and lived well." And I like to live by that philosophy. Conformity, especially in thought, is the death of growth. Book banning at its core is a demand for intellectual conformity. It's also risky, right? We need to know a wide range of thoughts. Emerson believed it was the thinker's duty to oppose, to be self-reliant. And isn't that the American way? That's what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments below. In the seminal book on liberty that John Stuart Mill wrote and was published in 1859, he said this: "The peculiar evil of expression is that of an opinion that is robbing the human race. If the opinion is right, they are deprived of the opportunity of exchanging error for truth. And even if wrong, they still lose the clearer perception and livelier impression of the truth produced by its collision with error." In other words, even wrong ideas serve a purpose. John Stuart Mill argues it sharpens the right ones, they force us to think harder, and in the case that unusual or outlier idea is true, suppressing it is an even graver error because we miss the opportunity for truth. And I think we all know this logically, right? One more quote from John Stuart Mill. He said, "If all mankind minus one were of one opinion, and only one person were of the contrary opinion, mankind would be no more justified in silencing that one person than he in silencing mankind." Or she. Freedom of expression isn't just for the majority, it's for the minority voice, obviously. That inconvenient, often disruptive, but essential voice. And then there's Henry David Thoreau. He too warns against intellectual passivity. Quote, "It's never too late to give up our prejudices." He wrote that in Civil Disobedience in 1849. Censorship isn't just about power, it's about fear. The fear that new ideas might disrupt comfortable assumptions, that exposure to discomfort might lead to transformation. But transformation is the point. That's where progress lives. So, what does this mean for you, the entrepreneur, expert, thought leader, or author building a brand in today's noisy, polarized world? Well, here are 3 strategic takeaways for anyone who would like to lead with wisdom. This is just what I think. Let me know in the comments below which one is your favorite, which one you're going to do, or suggest another takeaway from this story about Ryan Holiday. Number 1, read widely, especially read what challenges you. Don't just skim social media. Don't just read what confirms what you already believe. Read books that stretch you. Read the Stoics, read Emerson, read Thoreau, read Maya Angelou, read Ryan Holiday. Read people who make you think and rethink. Wisdom doesn't come from echo chambers. It comes from exposure. Number 2, build a message that can withstand peer pressure. As a thought leader or author or expert, your voice will be tested. Some people will ask you to soften it or change it. Only soften it if that is true to you, but not out of fear. Your message must be built to endure, not because it's loud, but because it's grounded in higher principles that can withstand the test of time. Like I'm doing here on Strategic Basics, I tried to give a shout out to both sides, which is something that news used to do, was to acknowledge both sides. And that's something that you can do to make your own message withstand pressure. And principle number 3, takeaway number 3, don't attack other people or other people's opinions, but do not sacrifice your principles. You don't have to rage, you don't have to attack, you don't have to make others wrong. Ryan Holiday modeled this brilliantly. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply decline to edit the truth out of your own work. And again, I recommend the book Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg to help you with this. In conclusion, here is what I think. Censorship doesn't just silence authors, it weakens audiences. It implies that we're not strong enough to read, to think, to debate, to decide for ourselves. But we are. You are. We get stronger by working out at the gym. Everybody knows that. But we also get stronger by working out our ideas. Flabby ideas can't withstand other points of view. Strong ideas can. wisdom isn't dangerous, it is essential. And we need more of it, not less, at every level of society. So if you're building something, a book, a brand, a business, I challenge you to build it with courage and clarity. Build it on the shoulders of the great thinkers throughout history, the Stoics, the Transcendentalists, or read Ryan Holiday. But that's just what I think. What do you think? Should some books be banned? If so, which ones and where do you draw the line? Was Ryan Holiday right to stand his ground, or do you think he was wrong? Was he right to publish his talk on YouTube so everybody could enjoy it and see what the frou-frou was about? I'd love to hear your comments, and let me know if you did listen to Ryan Holiday's talk or if you read his article in the New York Times. Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your take. This is Strategic Basics, where we turn today's headlines into tomorrow's opportunities.